Today we are going to do neuroplasticity on demand. So we will change our brains. We'll cover some of the neuroscience, some philosophy, but I'll go through a 5-minute daily practice that forces your brain to build the pathways you'll actually want. Let us begin. Cleopatra lived closer to iPhone than the pyramids. Let me explain. The Great Pyramids of Giza was completed around 2560 BC. Cleopatra lived in 30 BCE. So the time gap between Cleopatra and the pyramids is longer than the time gap between her and modern era. Now, what this illustrates is the immense scale of our history, where we come from. And it just shows that what we think is short term and long term is skewed. We start to think very short term. But even expanding that span of vision into a little bit more longer time can really help us. So if you want to start a new habit, we give up after like 7 days. If we want to change our way we speak to ourselves, we fall back into old patterns. We do not carry on long enough to see the results of our progress. So that is what I want us to start to think about. In that sense, let's dive into today's topic. Your brain processes 11 million bits of information every second, but your conscious mind can handle about 50. That means 99.9% of your reality is curated for you by your unconscious filters. And the chaos you feel isn't the world, it's the gap between what's happening and what you've chosen to focus on. So before we dive into today's little session, let's anchor the conscious mind. For the next few seconds, your only job is to notice what is the one thing you unconsciously filtered out for the day. Maybe things which we have not noticed. That is one way to start to find the things we are missing out. If you noticed it now, would you shift your energy? Maybe it's the quiet morning. Maybe it's the feeling of your feet on the ground, taking a breath, finding the anchor, and let's begin. So, how are you? Notice the breath flowing in and out, simply bringing loving kindness, acceptance, gratitude, compassion to your practice. Welcome to Daily Practice. So we think that we are stuck, but our personality, our automatic reactions, our fears, our habits, and they are not permanent fixtures, and they are pathways, and pathways can be rerouted. We've all heard of this term neuroplasticity. Sounds like a lab experiment, right? But it's actually what we do on a daily basis, whether we like it or not. What you repeat becomes you. And this little nugget of information was actually the most important information I've ever understood in the space of changing myself and changing others, is what we repeat consciously becomes you. So we have clearly understood little bits of what neuroplasticity is, but let's go deeper. So most of it treat it as like a passive phenomenon, something that just happens, but let's start with the basics, right? So because understanding the mechanism itself is half the practice. So for decades, even millennia, people believe that the adult brain, so when we grew up, was fixed. After a certain age, our mental wiring was complete. And actually, I believe a lot of people still carry around this belief that once you have set in your ways, you can never change. I am this person, so I will always be this person. I am an engineer. I am always an engineer. I am a doctor. I will always be a doctor. I am a angry person. I will always be an angry person. And all these ideas have just been has just been taught to us. It's not really true. So the idea that our brain is fixed is wrong. After a certain age, yes, the mental wiring starts to complete itself. But think of the brain as like a snowy field. Every time you have a thought, or repeat a habit, or feel a specific emotion, you are just creating a path, walking through that field. The first time it's difficult because you have to break the snow. The 10th time it becomes visible. The 1000th time you have a deep rut, a neural highway that your consciousness automatically defaults to. Now, the main purpose of our brain is survival. It's not happiness, it's survival. Happiness comes from our mind and soul, etc. But the main purpose of our brain is happiness, is survival. So it will choose the quickest way to maintain that. So it will default to the active things which has been already playing, knowing the fact that those neural pathways keep us alive. It will always default to that. And this is what our default mode means. This is why stress is easy to fall into. Every time you respond to a traffic or a difficult email with anger, that anger pathway deepens and faster and becomes faster. So again, I will repeat this again just for clarity. The more you practice something, the more it becomes you. This is efficiency for the brain. It saves energy by using established routes, but it's terrible for well-being if we have cultivated some habits along the way. Now, the goal of our practice is to stop taking these normal highways and start to intentionally break some new snow. This is a deliberate act of rewiring. And neuroscience shows us that our brain operates on two modes of plasticity. And one of them is highly neglected. One is called potentiation, fancy word for putting it together or wiring together. This is what we always focus on when it comes to neuroplasticity. Create new connections. Let's create new connections. Building new connections through repetition. Learning a new language. Repeating, starting your morning routine. Practicing gratitude. All of that wonderful things. But often we ignore the second aspect of neuroplasticity, is the pruning aspect or losing it. And this is just as critical. The brain is constantly trimming away synapses that aren't being used. This is why you don't remember what you studied in kindergarten, although some people remember it then. Good on you. It's the brain's way of decluttering. If you stop using a pathway, say the automatic urge to check social media every 5 minutes, the pathway literally weakens and dissolves. And I use this pruning technique in the addictions I've had in the past. So especially with cigarettes. And every time I saw the urge to have a smoke, and that used to be like every 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and I didn't, it started to create less. It created a new pathway wherein I wanted to find something else I can do, but it also started to weaken the pathway. So, I don't need to have a cigarette when I'm having my coffee. I don't need to have a cigarette every time I go to a new place. And that is pruning. That is real life example of what pruning looks like. So most self-help focuses on this potentiation, adding good habits, but the true wisdom requires a skill of subtraction. So, intentionally pruning the pathways of self-doubt, reactivity, and fear. In ancient philosophy, especially in Buddhism to Stoicism, has always focused on non-attachment. They told us to non-attach from thoughts and emotions. And now the modern science gives us mechanisms of non-attachment is literally the cognitive act that initiates synaptic pruning. So the quickest way to practice pruning is to practice non-attachment. And if you don't engage with the old pathway, your brain prunes it. The ancient wise ones knew it. They knew it. We keep doubting them and they keep showing up everywhere. All the science is starting to confirm unbelievable things now. The Nobel Prize for Physics in 2025 went for an idea called quantum tunneling in a macroscopic scale. So until now, people were saying, oh, these quantum effects happen only in small sizes. Now they've experimented and shown that quantum tunneling, which we may go discuss later, but quantum tunneling happens where like particles can move from this place to that place without actually moving. It just appears. It can happen at bigger scale. Now, what that means is that science is showing light. Science is shining the light on reality, but the light is very dim, and it's just noticing one area and showing, okay, there it is. This is the proof that this is happening. This is the proof that this is happening. But what is happening in the background is just vast and untenable for all of us combined, but we are still figuring it out. So the point being, the science is catching up, and science is starting to show that the ancient wisdom or the experiential or the transcendental ideas are not to be just pushed aside. So when we practice non-attachment, we start to prune our brain of all the habits which we want to get rid of. Now, we have to understand, if we want to understand the brain a bit more, to understand neuroplasticity, because that's what we're talking about today, let's talk about what the command center is. The command center is an area in the brain just behind your head, usually is represented in ancient mythology and philosophy and religion and spirituality as the third eye. It is the seat of the prefrontal cortex, or the PFC. Now, this is the most evolved part of your brain, responsible for executive function. Let me come back to what evolved means. It does not mean it is superior. It just means it adapted to its environment in a way that was conducive for human proliferation. In short, it helped us survive. So it evolved is not superior. A lot of people think, we are superior being. No, we are not. We are just simply similar beings to the entire universe. Everything is us and we are everything. So there is no superiority here. Humans are just humans. Let's just be that. Let's just get rid of this idea of anthropomorphizing. That's a word. That means we put everything into our perspective and see the world, whereas there's many millions of billions of perspectives that are not human-centered. So again, evolved doesn't mean the brain is evolved into something superior. It means that we found new ways to survive. And prefrontal cortex is the newest addition in the evolution of a human, or in evolution of species. But when we are stressed or reactive, this emotional part of the brain, or the parts of the brain which were developed far early in our life, not just in our life but in human evolution, takes the wheel. So when you start to pause, when you take a breath, when you choose your response, you're switching off this automatic patterns which we all have, which come from our surroundings, environments. As an act of survival, we pause, take a breath, suddenly we switch on our prefrontal cortex, and it can help control what we need to do. The difference between us, in one of the differences between us as human beings and other species in the planet, is that we were able to stop, pause, change direction, relax, identify, notice, move, and all of that. This was used for our survival, but this was also because we developed this prefrontal cortex, which is like controls, which has it's like a center of excellence sometimes. So the magic happens when you realize that this area can be trained, and it can be trained until we no longer need training. Every time you choose the wiser path, the new path over the old, you are strengthening this area of the prefrontal cortex, because you're starting to add more neurons to say that this is more important and give it more authority than the amygdala, which is just the part of the stress, fight, flight, freeze response. So let us build some PFC reps, which means let us just build a practice specifically to create this strengthening in our prefrontal cortex. But before that, I just want to say what Aristotle said about all this. Now, while neuroscience gives us the how, philosophy gives us the purpose. So 2000 years before an MRI scan, Aristotle stated, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, is a habit. In Aristotle's ethics, these are concepts called as virtue. He argued that the path to eudaimonia, often translated as flourishing or living well, is achieved by cultivating virtues. But how do you cultivate them? Answer: through practice. He would look at our daily neuroplasticity practice and not saying, yeah, this is how you build virtuous character. Courage is not a feeling. It's the repeated act of facing small fear. Patience isn't an inherent trait. It's a repeated act of pausing instead of reacting. So this practice reframes self-help from being about fixing a flaw to building a character. You're not trying to be not anxious. You're proactively building the neural pathways for calm and deliberate response. The core philosophical commitment we make before starting this practice is you are defined not by your intentions, but your repetitions. Your intention is the blueprint, the daily practice is the construction crew. So let's get specific. I call this the 5-minute reroute ritual. So let's call this a 5-minute reroute ritual. It's a targeted practice that incorporates everything we just talked about: mindful awareness, strategic choice, intentional repetition. And the goal is to Stop this reactive cycle at the moment of the trigger and consciously build the preferred neural highway. So you'll do this 3 times a day for at least 30 days. You can do more if you want. First, you need a specific target. Identify the single most common automatic unwanted loop you want to change. It must be specific and easily observable. Example, when my phone buzzes, I instantly pick it up. Why is that? When I was growing up, we had a dial-up. We had old phone. I don't even know whether anyone remembers these old phones, but it used to have like these dials, and you had to go krrr, 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 like that. And those phones used to sit in one place, right? And it would ring. It would ring for 5 minutes. Nobody will pick it up. And suddenly, 10 years later, every little alert, you are completely fixated. So that is actually, what is that other than practice? We first saw it, we did it. We saw this fancy new shiny thing in our hands, and that is not an apple, the fruit. But it was more interest, curiosity. We saw this, and then we started to get messages. We opened it. We repeated it thousands and thousands of times without us knowing it. Our prefrontal cortex was gone missing. And then it became a habit. So, notification becomes compulsion. Another example. When my partner gives me constructive criticism, I instantly feel defensive and shut down. Now, the repetition here is when we were growing up, we were told multiple times that we were wrong and you need to change. And that became the repetition. The pathway becomes criticism, goes into fear, fight, flight, amygdala goes off, and then sets off this fight-flight response. And 3, this is a very interesting one for me. Whenever I sit down to do any sort of work that I know I should do to get to where I want to go, I instantly get the urge to surf the web, look at another meditation video, look at different quotes, anything to get me off my plan. So the pathway practiced here is, when I was growing up, whenever I got work or done, or whenever I needed to get work done, I would distract myself because my ADHD brain didn't work off some structure. It worked with energy that I did not know. So I was forced to fit in to a place where you had to do structure when I was not ready for doing structure. So I started to seek dopamine in different ways rather than actually doing the work. So task inertia became a dopamine seeking path, neural pathway. And that is what I'm trying to prune now. So pick one for the next 30 days, write it down now, and label the pathway old pathway. Now step 2, let's define the new pathway. What is the desired response? Now this is where it gets really interesting. So this is your intentional action driven by the wisest self. Example. So notification example. when the notification happens, pause, breath, choose. And then you practice that over and over and over again. And then you will be surprised how many people notice your phone buzzing than you. I've had this many times when I'm like in a setting with a lot of people, I don't look at my phone. And I've practiced it. It's not just I'm amazing or anything. It's just I practiced so much that now I do not need to look at my phone when I'm in a group of people. And it didn't take that much time also to build that habit. It took me probably 60 to 50 days or something like that. Just kept repeating it. Every time I went into a social circle, I used to keep my phone in the pocket. I know I could feel it buzzing, and each time it buzzed, I remind myself to come back to this moment. What is in front of me? This person. So I engage. And like some people were like, "Oh, you don't have a phone or something? You don't use phones?" Like, yes, I use phones. And I would have it on the table, for example. It buzzes with something. They are more interested in what buzzed than me. So I'm just saying that this can radically change the way you can be present with your life. So example 2, criticism. We activate, we listen, we validate, and maybe ask a clarifying question. That's it. That's a new pathway there. And for the third one, task inertia, maybe there is so in the task inertia example, you can actually literally go, okay, I am feeling the inertia. Let me do 10 seconds of focused breathing. And engage with the task. And every time you notice your mind has wandered into another dopamine fix, pause, 10 seconds, come back. So this is a kind of a clear definition you need to make this work. Now, this 5-step process that takes place in a compressed, intense 5-second window. So you have to do this very quickly, otherwise it just falls back into old routines. So the number 1 step, alert. So once you've identified what you need to do and what your response is, now we play. The first step in the ritual is alert. Trigger occurs, phone buzzes, criticism starts. Your first fastest response is the old pathway. Immediately notice it. You don't judge it. You just say internally, alert. Oh, old pathway. This is pure mindfulness, awareness without judgment. This is the tiny moment of awareness that is required to break away from this automatic loop. So we are alert. Second step in this process, freeze. Physically, mentally, and emotionally. Stop all movement. This is also interestingly supported by vagus nerve and how it helps you reset. So when you are stop what you're doing, it actually helps engaging our prefrontal cortex. Step 3, anchor. Notice an anchor, the breath or the body. Just take a single deep conscious breath, slow inhale, and even slower exhale. This engages something called the parasympathetic nervous system, which makes us feel calm and relaxed. And starting to bring the blood back into your frontal cortex, prefrontal cortex. And this anchor or the breath is the physical bridge between your reactive self and your wisest self. Step 4, visualization and choice. Now, while exhaling, clearly visualize the old pattern and then visualize the new pattern, the one you've defined, and say to yourself, I choose. to pause and breathe here. I choose to listen and validate and ask clarifying questions. And this moment is a choice. And this is what we've been practicing for. This is on-demand neuroplasticity. So you're literally telling your neurons, build here. Build me a new pathway in the snow here. And step 5, immediately execute the first part of the new pathway. If the new pathway is pause, breath, decide, then action is decide. Do not delay. And here's another idea. A lot of us, we have compulsions, we have things which we do and we feel shame on doing them. All of that falls into this. So when you are doing something which you feel shameful, which is an old programming, which we'll talk about in another episode, but even if you do feel, like you go through all these 4 steps and the 5th step is decide, I want to carry out doing whatever I want to do. Go for it. And this is the difference. We are not cutting out things from our life. So for example, if you like a sugary snack, and that's been a challenge for you a lot, you do all the steps, you visualize, you start with the alert, you start to alert your brain with the old pathway. Every time I'm stressed, I'm reaching out for sugar. Then you freeze, you take a moment, you notice the breath, you visualize the choice. I choose to have this. It's okay. I choose to have this is okay. The difference between this time and the automatic reactive time is that you have created a different pathway. It is not the exact same thing. And a lot of people get stuck here. They come to the stage and they say, I just fell back into my... No, you did not fall back. You created a new pathway. Over time, what will happen? You will feel less reliant because there is so much more control your PFC has now that it knows, I can choose to stop and relook at what I'm doing. So take the decision after the steps. And this practice obviously requires repetition. And we repeat it anytime we think about anything, every day, every minute. Because the minimum necessary intensity to start building a new viable neural track is 3 to 4 times an hour. For a few days, you start to see changes. So, the Reroute Ritual, which we're talking about, is failure, alert, freeze, acknowledge. That was the old pathway, good learning. Now I choose compassion. When you fail, do not judge. Judgment strengthens the old pathways of self-criticism. Instead, use the failure as a prompt for the new reroute pathway. So failure means alert, then freeze, then acknowledge that this was the old pathway. It was good learning. Now I choose compassion. So the power is practice. The power of practice is its precision. You're not fighting a tidal wave of negativity. You are changing a single targeted tiny behavior loop over 30 days. These micro changes stack up to macro level transformation, literally visible in the structure if you have an MRI at home. Structure in your brain. So if you have an MRI at home, test it out. All right. So thank you for listening in. We've considered a lot of things. We've rooted this practice in science and coaching, but let's take a moment to integrate something spiritual as well. What does it mean for soul to choose a new path? It means recognizing that your true self, your wisest version, is not the collection of your automatic ruts. The spiritual journey is largely about the disidentifying of the ego's traumatic response and automatic response. So the spiritual journey is largely about disidentifying with the ego's automatic responses. So this practice 5-minute ritual is the moment you exercise your free will, in the sense that you have more control than you think. You are interrupting the momentum of your past and redirecting the energy of your future. So you are asserting that you are conscious architect of your life, not merely the unconscious product of your conditioning. So the wisdom here is that you don't have to wait for some sort of storm to pass to choose the wiser path. You can choose it right now. Choosing it when the pressure is highest is when it's most potent. So let the science empower you, let the spirituality empower you, let the philosophy empower you, let the practice free you. So your brain is ready to rebuild. So the tools are ready. The only thing left is your commitment to practice. So thank you for joining me in this daily practice episode, especially this one, which was interesting for me in a lot of ways, because this is something I found useful for myself and for a lot of my clients, and helped a lot of people in changing the way they do things in life. So the payoff is huge if you stay consistent and practice. So thank you for practicing with me today. Until next time, be intentional, be gentle, keep building that extraordinary life, one wise choice at a time. Thank you. Take it easy. See you on the next episode.